Hello, welcome to my channel In Search of Wonder. My name is Anne, and today we are going to go on a little tour of the Hillwood Estate in Washington, D.C., which was the home of Marjorie Meriweather Post. And as you will see, it is only appropriate to use our finest china while there. Recently, I read The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Meriweather Post by Allison Pataki, and it inspired me to go and revisit her final home in Washington, D.C., which, as I said, is called Hillwood Estate. It is also a museum and a garden. When Marjorie renovated that house, it was the final house that she lived in the last couple of decades of her life. She knew ahead of time that this house would be one where she wanted to preserve all of the things that she valued and treasured for future generations to enjoy, and to inspire future generations to enjoy the beauty of the finest art that the world has to offer, that she had spent many years collecting. Art not only in terms of paintings, but artifacts from around the world, primarily France and Russia, as well as furnishings, textiles, dresses, all of the trappings of her home and her lifestyle. She bequeathed her home to the Smithsonian Institute, which runs all of the museums, well, not all of the museums in downtown DC, but the ones many people are familiar with. The Smithsonian declined to run it as a museum, and so they turned it back to the Marjorie Post Foundation, which is currently the organization that runs Hillwood Estate to this day. And also on its board are some members of Marjorie Post's descendants, her family. So it was a wonderful trip. I went with my sisters. We live about an hour away from the part of DC where this house is. And it is in a wonderfully beautiful residential area north of the city. And it doesn't feel like you're in the city, but you're not really very far from all of the goings on downtown. So if you are ever in the DC area and you want something that's a little bit off the beaten path and not your usual run-of-the-mill tourist kind of stuff, definitely stop by and take a visit. And if you're a reader like me, you may want to read first The Magnificent Lives of Marjorie Post by Allison Pataki, so you can get an idea of the lifestyle that Marjorie Post lived, where her money came from, what she did with it, and why she preserved her final home as a museum for generations to come. So let's get started. Of course, we don't go anywhere without our coffee. So first we're going to stop for coffee, and then we're going to visit Hillwood Estate. I met my sisters at one of our favorite coffee shops in Vienna, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes or so from the Hillwood Estate. And this is Cafe Amore, and they have the best coffee. They roast it there, and they very carefully handcraft it. I got a hand-shaken coffee, iced coffee, which was quite delicious, and then we commenced our ride to Hillwood Estates. It's actually a lovely ride, and you don't feel like you're in the city at all. The tour begins at the Visitor Center, which is built on the site of the gardener's house. The tour guides are very informative there, and I found this in the bathroom very interesting. They also have a gift shop and bookstore in the Visitor Center with carefully curated items of things that Marjorie Post herself might have loved, including knickknacks and jewelry and scarves and accessories, other sorts of things, art. Also, Postum. I don't know if you've ever had that. It's an alternative to coffee. I've never had it. It doesn't sound very appealing to me, but Marjorie drank it every day of her life. Her father created it, and they thought it was healthier than actually drinking coffee. So, I don't know. In the bookshop, you can find books, including the one I read about Marjorie Post, Books that were of areas of particular interest to Marjorie Post, like Russia and French art and museums and art collecting and books, etc. All that fun stuff. And here it is, Hillwood Estate. Marjorie Post did not build this house. She bought it, but completely gutted and renovated the interior before moving in. Upon entering the house, you immediately see Marjorie Post's interest in Russian art. The walls are full of paintings of Russian Tsars and Tsarinas. Catherine the Great was the large portrait on the opposite wall, and here we see Nicholas on the far left and Alexandra, the last Tsar and Tsarina of Russia, and in between them is a portrait of Nicholas's father. This room is called the Pavilion. It's where Marjorie Post entertained. Listen as our tour guide tells you a little bit about how she entertained her guests here in the Pavilion.
After dinner, her guests would be brought here, and then she would show the first-run movie. So, above the balcony, that is the projection room. The balcony was for Marjorie's staff, so her staff would watch too. She was very good to her staff. Behind the purple panels is where the program screen is. And then
we walk through this lovely passageway and can see some of the artifacts that Marjorie Post had collected along the way, installed in the displays along the walls. But this passage leads to the rooms where she showcased her collections of French and Russian porcelain. This is, of course, one of my favorite rooms in the house, her library on the main floor. There was her father, C.W. Post. He started the Postum cereal company, and his first product was grape nuts, which you, I'm sure, have heard of. And over the years, Postum Foods became General Foods and acquired a great many other brands, which is what gave Marjorie Post her money. She was very wealthy by the time her father passed away and she inherited his estate, and her wealth only continued to accrue. So this is her library, which, as you can see, is a more formal library. Upstairs was a more casual library that was fun to see as well. That is a portrait of Marjorie Post when she was younger, up there on the wall. Those are flowers from her garden, decorating her library. We'll talk about her gardens more in a minute. You can see all of the various portraits and knickknacks, family knickknacks, decorating this space, and these mirrored shelving along either corner of the library. And then she had these lawyers' bookcases between the windows on the other side that was behind me as I was taking the previous video. And I can just tell, I don't know much about rare books, but I can just tell that these are rare and first editions. I'm sure that Marjorie Post was just as careful about collecting her books as she was about collecting all her other works of art. And there were some amazing books that she had there. In a minute here, one that really caught my eye was Les Miserables. That is not the only volume that she had of that. She had a couple. There's more. Les Miserables. Look at all of those beautiful old books. Wrap up our tour. We'll look at all of the gardens, starting with the greenhouses and Marjorie Meriweather Post's magnificent orchid collection. And then from here, I'll take you on a little tour of all of the other gardens she had. Japanese garden, French parterre garden, rose garden, although I didn't get much footage of the roses, and her massive cutting garden. If this isn't really your thing, feel free to skip ahead to the conclusion of our tour. Come play in the fountain. To round out our day, we had a delicious lunch at the cafe on site. Of course, we stopped for coffee on the way home. And that wraps up my visit to Hillwood Estate. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're able to visit it sometime. I hope you enjoyed that visit to Hillwood Estates, and I hope that someday you are able to go there yourself and see it in person if you haven't already. And if you do, be sure to stop by and leave a comment for me, letting me know that you were able to go there. And let me know what it is that you enjoyed while you were staying there. And if you have not been there and don't have any plans to come anywhere near DC in the future, I hope that this little video visit was enjoyable to you and that you were able to catch a glimpse of all of the wonderful artifacts and art that Marjorie Post collected. And let me know in the comments what was most intriguing to you about Marjorie Post's collections, her house, her gardens, her life, anything that I mentioned in this video. And I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks for joining me on this tour, and I will see you next time. Bye.